those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, folks, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. You found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are, building a liberty machine, and we can't do the program without you listening every single day. The telephone number, 870-275-9799, if you would like to contribute to the conversation. Let me just tell you something. We have pretty interesting grouping of stories to get to. Coming up at 7 o'clock, though, we're going to be talking with a guest having to do with this trade war in China. Just how bad is it going to get? I want to introduce you to a man by the name of Joel Block. He is a hedge fund manager, and we just, wanted to talk to him. The financial guys are the ones watching the trade war with China more than anybody. More than the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, even. They're watching it because, they want these deals with these communist Chinese countries to go through so that they can come here to Arkansas. But some of these, hedge fund managers, people, they're definitely watching this because they want to know, what the future is, predictability. And right now the situation is kind of unpredictable, so we'll talk to him at 7:05. Also, coming up at 7:33, guess what? The numbers are in. You can go to conduitnews.com and you can check out the projected figures for how much your taxes are going up thanks to the 92nd General Assembly. Were there some good bills? Yeah. There were some tax cuts. There were some tax increases. And when it's all said and done, you're giving a lot more money to the government over the next couple of fiscal years than you thought. And these are, according to the Department of Finance Administration's numbers, according to also other reports in the news, that when you look at these numbers and then compare them to the record revenues that we're seeing, it gets pretty frustrating very quickly. If you've been voting for Republicans because of their limited government stance, i.e., the government should do more with what it already has. And if you're going to come back to the people and ask for more money, you should at least have some money in hand that you found that you've already cut somewhere else. That didn't even happen. There wasn't even a discussion about that. We'll tell you the story. We'll give you the scoop at 7:33. Now, here's the thing on that. I'm going to accompany the report at conduitnews.com. I'm going to accompany this with a video from earlier in the week where Victor Davis Hanson was on Tucker Carlson, Fox News Tucker Carlson. Now, yeah, we've had Victor on the program before a couple times, but Victor Davis Hanson was on Tucker Carlson, and he was going over how bad California is, the state of California. And I'm not exaggerating this at all. If you go and listen to that, which we will, the first 3 minutes of him explaining the history of why California, a solid Democrat state, has gone from bad to worse, how their elites get richer, the poor get poorer and get forgotten about. All of this stuff, you would think they were talking about Arkansas's trajectory. And I know you're going to say, Paul, that's ridiculous, that's crazy. Wait till you hear the audio clip. We've got it coming up at the bottom of the next hour. All right, let's talk first some national news here, because this is absolutely hilarious to me. This is hilarious to me, and I'm I was waiting on this to happen. I kind of assumed this is why I didn't think 100% that Joe Biden was going to be the nominee, even though there are many people that say, Joe Biden is the one candidate that has the best chance of beating Trump. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but what I do know is that the Democrat Party, they're just too radical to nominate somebody like Joe Biden. So they're going to use their warped ideology to eat him. And that's exactly what has happened. If you'll go over to this first piece, Joe, with Joe Biden here. Let me see here. I've got like a ton of articles. Oh, by the way, I was just looking at the Wednesday slot. Yeah, go ahead and put this up. So Biden praises civility, quote, civility. You'd think that'd be fine, right? But the problem is it was during this Jim Crow era, civil rights era, and he was praising the civility of two arch segregationists. So if you're going to praise the civility of two arch segregationists, guess what? Guess what? You're going to be eaten by the people on the left because, you know, it is, after all, a Democrat primary. That's what this is. So, you know, here we go. I mean, it's like blood in the water. It's like if you're going shark fishing, you know, they got that bucket of fish guts or whatever. Yeah, chum. Yeah, that's exactly what this statement was. So what exactly did Joe Biden say? Well, he was at a fundraiser at the Carlisle Hotel in New York City. And he was saying that he was, it was vital that he be the next president, quote, to be able to reach consensus under our system, to explain why he was the best candidate. Now, listen to this. This is crazy. To explain why Joe Biden is the best candidate to be able to reach consensus, he reaches way back in history. By the way, this is also reminding people that Joe Biden was around during segregation. I know technically you say, well, you should know that, but there's a lot of people that don't, right? I don't know if it's the hair plugs, but maybe, who knows? To explain why he's the best candidate in that regard, Biden fondly cited his history of working with two of the Senate's arch segregationists, the late James Eastland, a Democrat from Mississippi, and Herman Talmadge, a Democrat from Georgia. Quote, I was in a caucus with James O. Eastland, Biden said with an attempted Southern drawl. He never called me boy. He always called me son. Well, guess what? The former vice president continued. At least there was some civility. We got things done. We didn't agree on much of anything. We got things done. First of all, that's a good question. How do you get things done when you don't agree with somebody? Anyway, we didn't agree on much of anything, but we got things done. We got it finished. But today you look at the other side and you're the enemy, not the opposition, the enemy. We don't talk to each other anymore. Now, that's not just like, that's not a statement that I necessarily disagree with. And I'm going to make the point to you here in a minute how ridiculous it's gotten by playing some of this reparations, this reparation hearing they had yesterday in the House. Did you hear about this? They decided to have a hearing in the House of Representatives on whether or not they should give black Americans reparations. White people. Should white people give black Americans reparations for their ancestors who were slaves? By the way, did you know that that's part of American history? It's the Civil War and slavery? Did you? I'm just making sure. You know, you do hear about it so often. It's almost like they think people are going to forget about it or something.
Don't forget.
So the interesting thing here is that the Democrats decided to eat Joe Biden after this comment. Cory Booker, a presidential candidate, was asked by Joe Biden to apologize because Booker said that this was ridiculous, that you should know better. Booker said, I'm not going to apologize. I was raised to speak truth to power. I will never apologize for doing that. And Vice President Biden shouldn't need this lesson. And at a time when we have, from the highest offices in the land, divisiveness, racial hatred, and bigotry being spewed, he should have the sensitivity to know that this is a time I need to be an ally. I need to be a healer. I need to not engage in uses of words that will harm folks. So he's just referencing that he knew segregationists and worked with him in Congress, and now they're going to destroy Joe Biden. Folks, conservatives, again, just quietly back out of the room. Don't just kind of just let them go. Let's just let them do their thing.
It's like the wind-up clapping monkey. Just wind up and let them go.
So then we have, after this, people are so outraged by this, Biden's ad maker decided to depart. He didn't give a reason. He wished Joe Biden well, but he's a political strategist and a television ad maker told the New York Times he was leaving the Biden campaign. Wonder why. Wonder what that, did anybody know exactly why? What's interesting is during all of this, during this controversy with Joe Biden, you have the Democrats in the House holding a hearing on reparations. And the Republicans had two witnesses. And one of them was a New York Giants football champion, Burgess Owens. Let's listen to what Burgess had to say in this clip via Breitbart News. Go ahead and click. Let's see. Is this the one you have? Go up.
I don't think so.
No, I think you got the wrong one here. Yeah, it's the one Owens, very bad things.
Oh, this one.
Yeah. So there, right there. Go ahead. I've got it queued up. Go ahead and click play, Joe. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm going to take a different tack from beginning. We are at this point, this is not about black and white, rich and poor, blue collar, white collar. We're fighting for the heart and soul of our nation. We have a very, very special country that started with the Judeo-Christian values that allowed every single generation to become better than the last. And that has not ended, that has not stopped until now. We're telling our kids a little bit something different, that they don't have the opportunities that we had. I'm going to talk about some ideologies. And when I talk about them, I'm not talking about people. People change. I used to be a Democrat until I did my history and found out the misery that that party brought to my race. So when I talk about these ideologies don't change, people do. We're fighting for the heart and soul of our nation against socialism, Marxism, and the evil that it has brought to us in the stealing of our history. Karl Marx said it best, the father of socialism, an atheist, anti-Semite, and a blatant racist. Yet we teach his philosophy in our school systems today. He said it, the first battleground is rewriting of our history.
Wow.
You steal our history, you steal our pride in our past, our appreciation for our present, and our vision for our future. And every single urban city in our country is now experiencing that loss. Real quick history, because these are things that we're not taught. I'm blessed to be the great-great-grandfather of Silas Burgess. Came here in the belly of a slave ship, sold in Charleston, South Carolina with his mother.
He's blessed, he says.
To the Burgess plantation. An evil, evil man that drove my great-great-great-grandmother either to leaving her family, her kids, or committing suicide. I don't know, she disappeared. But Silas at age of eight, was blessed to be surrounded by men who believed in freedom. Even though they were shackled, they escaped. They went the southern route of the Underground Railroad, facilitated by white and Mexican Americans. And he's made his way out south to Texas. He ended up being a successful entrepreneur, owning 102 acres of land, paid off in 2 years. Started the first black church, the first black elementary school. Pillar of his community, 18 kids, Christian, Republican. His first son was Alpha Omega. Proud American, an example of what happens when any race, any culture is given hope, opportunity, and freedom. It didn't end there, by the way. The history of our black country, of our black Americans, has been stolen from us for decades, almost over a century. Booker T. Washington, 1882, began Tuskegee University. By 1905, it was producing more self-made black millionaires than Harvard, Yale, and Princeton combined. The 40s, 50s, and 60s, it was a black community that led our country in the growth of the middle class. Led our country in terms of the men committed to marriage, over 70%, now it's 30%. Led our country in terms of the committed to business ownership, 40%, now it's 3.8%.
Gosh.
Men matriculated from college. We now have a higher percentage of men incarcerated in college. It is, by the way, my degree was biology. And that, I learned a long time ago that slavery is not a gene in the DNA helix. It's our actions, it's our attitude, it's our belief. I do not believe in reparation, because what reparation does, it points to a certain race, a certain color, and it points them as evil, and points the other race, my race, as one that is not only becomes racist, but also beggars. I do believe in restitution. Let's point to the party that was part of slavery, KKK, Jim Crow, that has killed over 40% of our black babies, 20 million of them. State of California, 75% of our black boys cannot pass standard reading and writing tests, a democratic state. So yes, let's play restoration. Let's play restitution. How about a Democratic Party pay for all the misery brought to my race? And those, after we learn our history, decide to stay there, they should pay also, they're complicit. And every white American, Republican or Democrat, that feels guilty because of your white skin, you should need to pony up also. That way we can get past this reparation and recognize that this country has given us greatness. Look at this panel. It doesn't matter how we think. The fact is, well, it doesn't matter our color. We have become successful in this country like no other because of this great opportunity to live the American dream. Let's not steal that from our kids by telling them they can't do it.
Man, I wanted you to hear that. Again, that's that clip courtesy of Breitbart.com. I wanted you to hear that. That's incredible. Again, Burgess Owens, former NFL player. I don't know what position he played, by the way. Excuse my ignorance in sports, but he was from the New York Giants. They won a Super Bowl, I believe. I mean, that's just incredible to me. And I wish he would do what? He was a safety? Here's the thing. I wish the mic drop moment to me was, how about the Democrat Party pay reparations for all the misery you've caused my race? I mean, that's incredible to me that he said that. Now, listen, I don't know about you, but I don't know, certainly over the last 2 years, thanks to Candace Owens and the Blexit movement and everything else, certainly over the last 2.5 years, there really has been a focus to try to educate the people, I think black Americans who believe just because the color of their skin is darker than other people's, that they must vote for Democrats. You know what I'm saying? There are still people that just believe that. It's very strange. It's like the Democrat Party is the party of slavery, Jim Crow, and now they're the party of abortion that's still deciding, not based on skin color, but based on weeks of gestation, whether or not you're a person or not. It's very consistent. You got to ask yourself, historically, how in the world are you still consistent on one of the biggest social issues of our time, abortion? Slavery used to be one of the biggest social issues. And the Democrat Party is still taking the side in being intellectually consistent over them being able to decide who's a person and who's not under the U.S. Constitution. You say, Paul, but Roe versus Wade, a Supreme Court decision. Yeah, Dred Scott, Supreme Court decision. There is an effort out there to educate people about the true history of this country. And there's a lot of people's eyes that are being opened, and I'm certainly happy. It's because of people like that. People like Mr. Burgess here, or Mr. Owens, they're the ones that are really going to, I think, open a lot of people's eyes. Mainstream media, though, is not going to be covering this speech too much. And, of course, other journalists are exposing their racism by being upset and incensed at what he said. We got to take a break. Back in a minute. Folks, the Patriots of Act 746 are on a mission to educate people of Arkansas about your gun rights, about constitutional carry, permitless carry. You don't need a permission slip from the government. And you can find out more. Go to Facebook.com, search for Patriots of Act 746. Here to talk more about that this week, because it's Wednesday at 6:30. Let's talk with Mr. Dan Borum is back with us. Dan, how you doing, sir?
Paul, I'm doing great. How are you this morning?
And I am fantastic. I'm fantastic. It's been too long, sir. I wanted to speak with you a little bit about what went on yesterday. Did I see that there was a hearing stream? Somebody was streaming a hearing, and I remember I heard, was that State Representative John Payton asking the Arkansas State Police about their concealed carry rules?
Yes, sir, that is correct. I didn't get to watch all of it.
Hey, folks, it's me, Paul Harrell. I want to say hello to everybody out there who's listening. We appreciate you and your support, especially those listening on KFPW, the Marshall out of Fort Smith, 96.7 FM, 1230 AM. You know, for all of our listeners, if you ever missed the program, you can get us online at conduitnews.com, facebook.com/conduitnews, or our YouTube channel. Just search for Conduit News and be sure to click the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications. Here at Conduit News Radio, we provide you multiple ways to listen to your #1 source for Arkansas news and politics. ConduitNews.com.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Joe and I are just sitting here talking about who they're going to nominate, who are the Democrats actually going to nominate. And it was somebody on our Facebook page said this back when we were talking about Joe Biden, and said that they're not going to nominate Joe Biden, that it's probably going to be Bernie or the Pete Buttigieg guy. And
I'm pretty sure every time I've heard you say his last name, it's different every time.
I don't know how to say his name.
I don't either.
Buttigieg. I think that's how you say it. Buttigieg? Anyway. That's what Buttigieg is gay. Buttigieg is openly gay, and I guess is he got a partner or something? Got another guy that's,
as far as I'm aware,
they're committed to each other in some way.
I don't know much about him, but I guess they would. I guess I know that.
Yeah. So, can you imagine if the Democrat Party nominates an openly gay man to run against this president? I mean, I just think about that. You talk about an interesting election. It would be extremely interesting. I think President Trump would win. I think his chances of winning go up. And say, why, Paul? Because he's gay? Yeah, I think that's going to have something to do with it. I really do. I think that would. I think that would be a factor.
Well, so one of the things that we talked about, but I didn't get a chance to expound more on.
Yeah.
Was so this runs out. They select Pete as their nominee. This runs all the way out post election. Trump wins.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I said that the left was going to militarize the campaign elections.
Yeah.
Kind of what they did last time, but they had a very different turn on it. This time it's going to be they're going to really turn the left, the people that are on the left, against anyone who voted for Trump by saying that they didn't want this man in office because he's gay.
Because he's gay. Yeah. That's going to be the whole thing.
It's going to be massive militarization of the left.
The deplorable idea will be much worse. What are the odds if it's Pete Buttigieg on a debate stage, Trump makes a gay joke? I'm asking for bets. Anyone? 100%. I mean, if he's willing to look Hillary Clinton in the face, and say something like, that's because you'd be in jail, I got a feeling, uncensored Trump's gonna make a gay joke. I got a feeling, man. It'll be an interesting election, that's for sure. Back in just a moment.
I don't really have the full scoop on that, but that's something that we can look into just a little bit. What we have is, it looked like there was a review concerning the new requirements on the considered program, which has to do with, I think they're requiring that you disclose medical records and things of this nature. And so,
so
it looked
you
like
kind of broke up there. So, and I saw this. I saw, according to the new rules, it seemed like it was a backdoor red flag law to where if you decide to get a concealed carry license, which, by the way, at this point is only really useful if you're going to travel out of state. If you get a concealed carry license, when you sign that, you're now saying that they have a right to your medical records, right?
That is the new requirement in the Arkansas State Police concealed carry program, is disclosing medical records that may prevent you from being able to have a concealed carry permit. And what we have is basically an unconstitutional program. With the concealed carry program is an unconstitutional program anyway, and then you have unconstitutional requirements. And so the whole thing is garbage to begin with. And it appeared to be Richard Womack, Terry Rice, John Payton, Gary Stubblefield, and had called the ASP on the carpet and asked them to give them the statute that would criminalize a person to conceal carry without a permit. And obviously, it just left them speechless. They couldn't give them the statute because there isn't one. Mm-hmm. And so, but yet they are still striving to get 746 back on the table during legislation, and the whole purpose is so that they can bring a new requirement back to the state of Arkansas so that you can open carry without a permit, but to conceal carry you must have a permit, which is the way Oklahoma has been for a long time until their recent legislation where they now have constitutional carry. And so Arkansas is trying to slide backwards rather than to go forward, and it's going to be very, very important for we the people to hold our legislators accountable and to encourage them to keep our inalienable rights intact, and not to allow more gun legislation to come on the table.
I just don't understand why a state agency would resist what the people have already decided. What I mean by that is the legislature voted the current law the way it is. They voted it in.
That's right.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, here we go. Hey, real quick, we've kind of been focusing a lot on tax policy in the state. You guys know this. So we also focus on the local tax policy. And I was watching yesterday, getting caught up, a video of the Jonesboro City Council as they're trying to pass a tax increase on the people by sending it. Of course, they get to be absolved because they can say, well, we're not actually passing the tax increase because the people are going to vote on it. And it's a 1 cent sales tax increase, and it's half of it's for police and fire, and the other half is for all these projects. And I have to say, I was very disappointed as I watched the video of some of the council members and how flippant and apparently elitist some of them seemed when it came. Well, I guess not all of them. I mean, and not. I'm not even saying, there are some out there who are for the tax increase. That I guess the way the proceedings were conducted, the way the questions, and I think maybe it was the city attorney, the way the city attorney was answering some questions, it was extremely. It was certainly not neutral, and it was very condescending at times. And I thought that was just very sad, honestly, because this is a big issue, and we have some people who want the tax increase so bad that they want to, it seems to me, not everybody, but if you are for lower taxes, you are somehow against progress, or you are somehow against your local community. And if we're going to start painting that picture, which I'm not saying everybody is, but that you can just tell that there's already a predetermined outcome that's desired. That's why they're doing it in a special election, which is a whole nother issue in and of itself. But the fact of the matter is, the more people that do commerce, the more sales tax revenue you get. That's how the sales tax is supposed to work. Meaning, when you get more people moving to your community and there's more economic activity and more commerce, the government gets more revenue, and then you can use that extra revenue to do more things. But the percentage of money you're taking from people can remain the same. There were also some some other arguments, and I'm going to probably address some of these on Monday. I'm going to let you hear the video. I'm sorry, let you hear the video on tomorrow's show on some of this stuff. But anyway, it's just really interesting to me that people they only want to talk about how great these projects like a pool or like whatever. They want to talk about how great this will be for the city, but they don't really want to talk about tax policy and the idea that coming July 1st, people are now going to be paying full state and local sales tax on all of their internet purchases, all of your subscription purchases to things like Spotify. They don't want to talk about, and I'll reference you up at conduitnews.com, thanks to the 92nd General Assembly, we're going to be paying in the first fiscal year a $70 million increase in money from the government, or from the people to the government. How much is enough? How much money does government at all levels is taking from us? It is ludicrous when you sit down and actually think about it. And then you got people telling you, no, but we really need a water park to make our lives better. And I also want to say this about, and I'll get into this more tomorrow, and you'll actually hear the audio of this. But there was a representative of this group, and you guys feel free over in Fort Smith. Did they do this with the Marshall Museum? When they was there like a core group of people that had this appearance of being some sort of grassroots, organic, disconnected from the government, that were just, we really need this, we need a sales tax to pay for the Marshall's Museum? Or was it all government based? Because what they're doing over here on the other side of the state is they have this organization called Team Jonesboro. So if you're against the tax increase, you're not on Team Jonesboro. If you're for the tax increase, you're on Team Jonesboro. And this Team Jonesboro, and they have this appearance of a bunch of people, respected people in the community. I'm sure they got great intentions, and they're now somehow organically, I'm sure they weren't approached by any government official at all. They've got this appearance of, hey, we're this grassroots, we've gotten together, and we want the sales tax. And on their website, they have a list of projects, and they were asked by Alderman Bobby Long, who will be on the program next week. They were asked by him, hey, you have a list of the projects that you'd hope that this tax would fund, but you don't have a fiscal impact on this. Do you guys know how much each one of these would cost? And the representative from Team Jonesboro said, yeah, we do, but we don't want to put that out there. We don't want to put the cost of each project out there, because then that ties the money that would be raised to fund those projects. And something about that doesn't make sense to me. Now, number one, setting aside the fact that if the people vote for more money going to the government from themselves, they should know exactly what it's going to be used for. Exactly. Obviously, aside from police and fire, we know generally what that's going to be used for. But when it comes to, well, we'll do this with it, and we'll do that with it, just what are they promising? And I have a feeling that the people who want this tax increase are going around to every existing organization that may want something, and going around to people who want a new aquatic center or a shooting range or whatever, and saying, hey, we'll get this done, hey, we'll get this done, hey, we'll get this done, with like basically being Santa Claus with no actual, nothing is concrete. They could get this money and not do any of these things with it, because if they pass it, they're going to set up a committee, and then the committee decides where the money goes. it's not the way. It's not good government, folks. It's not good government. It's not good tax policy, but it's just not good government. When you raise a tax, say, okay, we're raising a tax for, at least Fort Smith said, hey, this tax is going to go to build the Marshall Museum and, cross our heart, hope to die. We hope it'll increase tourism for those that want to come to Fort Smith and learn about the U.S. Marshal Service and the birth of that, great law enforcement organization. Okay, all right. Now, it failed. The people of Fort Smith said no, and it was during a special election, too, by the way. But at least they knew what they were voting on. Over here on the eastern side of the state, they're saying, hey, pass this tax increase so we can find out what we're going to build later. What? That's crazy. And Fayetteville did the same thing. And that's what this is. This is part of, an attempt to keep up with the Joneses as well. I actually think having a lower sales tax rate, city sales tax rate, is a good thing. You could put up signs. You could advertise it. Hey, do business, do commerce here. Build a business here. Your employees will have more money in their pockets. But no. And that's because people at local government, I'm sorry, I have a tendency to paint a broad brush. But this is all about what people would want if we lived in a world with infinite resources. And the fact is that we don't. And nobody wants to think about whether or not we should. Just because you want something doesn't mean that you know anything about economics. I mean, we could go around. I mean, let's just give everybody $1 million. Why can't we just give everybody $1 million, right? Anyway, certainly something to think about. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. We'll get to that here in a minute. Back to the reparations hearing, okay? So we heard from a man in the first segment by the name of Burgess Owens. He's a former NFL New York Giants safety, and I believe they won a Super Bowl. And he's in this reparations hearing in Washington, D.C., and he asks the Democrat Party that the Democrat Party should pay reparations for all of the misery that it has caused his race. But he wasn't actually for reparations, but he was just making a statement about how America's great. He said he was blessed to be in this country and, talked about his great-great-great-great-grandfather. And he knew the slave ship that he came on. He knew the family that he was with. He even talked about how brutal the slave owner was. Anyway, it's a fact. You can go check it out. We played it in the last segment. But then there was somebody else that the Republicans had to testify during this very, very strange day. And his name is, let's go ahead and pull this up. 1 second, because I have this ad blocker thing. The websites are getting very sophisticated, let me tell you, when it comes to this stuff. From Tommy Christopher over at Mediaite.com, headline, Chill, 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 Congressional Hearing Explodes as Witness Trashes Slavery Reparations Bill. So this guy actually got booed. His name is Coleman Hughes. I've got it queued up. Coleman Hughes, who is a columnist and author from Quillette Online Magazine, a Democrat. This man is a Democrat. And this is what he said about reparations. Listen.
Nothing I'm about to say is meant to minimize the horror and brutality of slavery and Jim Crow. Racism is a bloody stain on this country's history, and I consider our failure to pay reparations directly to freed slaves after the Civil War to be one of the greatest injustices ever perpetrated by the U.S. government. But I worry that our desire to fix the past compromises our ability to fix the present. Think about what we're doing today. We're spending our time debating a bill that mentions slavery 25 times, but incarceration only once, in an era with no black slaves, but nearly 1 million black prisoners. A bill that doesn't mention homicide once, at a time when the Center for Disease Control reports homicide as the #1 cause of death for young black men. I'm not saying that acknowledging history doesn't matter. It does. I'm saying there's a difference between acknowledging history and allowing history to distract us from the problems we face today. In 2008, the House of Representatives formally apologized for slavery and Jim Crow. In 2009, the Senate did the same. Black people don't need another apology. We need safer neighborhoods and better schools. We need a less punitive criminal justice system. We need affordable health care. And none of these things can be achieved through reparations for slavery. Nearly everyone close to me told me not to testify today. They told me that even though I've only ever voted for Democrats, I'd be perceived as a Republican and therefore hated by half the country.
Wow.
Others told me that by distancing myself from Republicans, I would end up angering the other half of the country.
The booze came at the
And the sad
perfect time.
truth is that they were both right. That's how suspicious we've become of one another. That's how divided we are as a nation. If we were to pay reparations today, we would only divide the country further, making it harder to build the political coalitions required to solve the problems facing black people today. We would insult many black Americans by putting a price on the suffering of their ancestors. And we would turn the relationship between black Americans and white Americans from a coalition into a transaction, from a union between citizens into a lawsuit between plaintiffs and defendants. What we should do is pay reparations to black Americans who actually grew up under Jim Crow and were directly harmed by second-class citizenship, people like my grandparents. But paying reparations to all descendants of slaves is a mistake. Take me, for example. I was born 3 decades after the end of Jim Crow into a privileged household in the suburbs. I attend an Ivy League school. Yet I'm also descended from slaves who worked on Thomas Jefferson's Monticello plantation. So reparations for slavery would allocate federal resources to me, but not to an American with the wrong ancestry, even if that person is living paycheck to paycheck and working multiple jobs to support a family. You might call that justice. I call it justice for the dead at the price of justice for the living. I understand that reparations are about what people are owed, regardless of how well they're doing. I understand that. But the people who are owed for slavery are no longer here, and we're not entitled to collect on their debts. Reparations, by definition, are only given to victims. So the moment you give me reparations, you've made me into a victim without my consent. Not just that, you've made 1/3 of black Americans who poll against reparations into victims without their consent. And black Americans have fought too long for the right to define themselves to be spoken for in such a condescending manner. The question is not what America owes me by virtue of my ancestry. The question is what all Americans owe each other by virtue of being citizens of the same nation. And the obligation of citizenship is not transactional. It's not contingent on ancestry. It never expires, and it can't be paid off. For all these reasons, Bill H.R. 40 is a moral and political mistake. Thank you.
Again, thank you. Coleman Hughes, a columnist and author who says that he's voted Democrat all of his life, but reparations are a mistake. Getting booed from the audience. Matter of fact, you can see some people behind them, putting their hands on their head or their face in their hands because they're so disappointed. And this, of course, has led to the left and other journalists to criticize not only Burgess Owens, who testified against reparations, and also this gentleman. It's also, wouldn't you know, these journalists have exposed their own racism. Go to the next article, Joe. I don't have it here in front of me. This from the Daily Wire. Black New York Times writer mocks blacks testifying against slave reparations. Quote, they have no apparent qualifications other than being black. I mean, good grief, we're talking about reparations where the only qualification is being black. Or, for the most part, a descendant of slavery. I mean, listen, is it like they're just They're such hypocrites. They are such hypocrites. Let's scroll down here. Let me give this a glance, shall we? So, a black writer for the New York Times apparently incensed that other blacks might not support the move toward reparations for American slavery ripped the black witnesses testifying against reparations, tweeting that the witnesses have no apparent qualifications other than being black. So, being a role model like Burgess Owens, NFL safety, New York Giants Super Bowl champion, that's, I guess you have to what? You should have gone to Harvard and studied critical race theory, and then maybe you would have some credentials. The College Fix notes the New York Times writer by the name of Jamal Bowie, formerly chief political correspondent for Slate magazine, was infuriated by the idea of former NFL player Burgess Owens and Columbia University philosophy major Coleman Hughes testifying, writing on Twitter, "So will the Republican members of the subcommittee on the Constitution, Civil Rights, and Civil Liberties have anyone serious speaking about reparations, or will they just invite Candace Owens again to do her thing?" It looks like they'll have this guy who wrote an op-ed in College Sophomore, and a college sophomore up against an economics expert, a U.S. Senator, Ta-Nehisi Coates, who brought this all into the mainstream. It is indicative of the fundamental contempt Republicans have for this conversation, that their speakers have no apparent qualifications other than being black. So there you go. You have elitism piled on elitism. Piled on elitism? 870-275-9799. We're going to take a break. Coming up at 7 o'clock, we're going to be introducing you to a man that's going to tell us a little bit about this trade war with China. His name is Joel Block from Bullseye Capital. He's author, Stop Hustling Gigs and Start Building a Business. We're going to talk a little. He's a financial hedge fund manager. We're going to talk about how long is this trade war with China going to last, get his thoughts on all of that. Then at 7:33, are your taxes going up? By that I mean, here in the state of Arkansas, are the people about to be sending a gargantuan amount of money more to the government than they were sending before the 92nd General Assembly that started back in January? We'll give you those numbers, and they're up right now if you want to get a sneak peek at conduitnews.com. Back in a moment.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
And we clarified it.
Yeah.
We clarified it with the resolutions in this past legislation, but yet they are continuing to ignore the law. They ignore their own laws. They ignore, in fact, in the codes that they wrote for the enhanced carry, they ignore their own laws as far as those who are teaching the classes They don't hold them accountable. They don't hold these instructors accountable for the way that they're teaching it, their credentials, everything that they do. They're doing their very own requirements, and yet they want us to be able to. They want us to go along with the requirements that they're putting out, and we've got to just stay vigilant, Paul, and not allow these things to happen. And the only way that we can do that is to stay in touch with our legislators and to stay on the up and up. I want to read something if I can. I was doing a little research just on our forefathers.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, 870-275-9799. Cue up this Tom Cotton clip, Joe. By the way, I got confused, okay, about so on Monday I told you Senator Cotton was going to be on the show on Tuesday, and I was confused. I was looking at the wrong date. Apparently, Senator Cotton's going to be on the show next Thursday. So is today Thursday? So a week from today. And I believe it's sometime in the 7 o'clock hour. I think it's 7:05. I think he's going to be at the top of the 7 o'clock hour. Anyway, just wanted to clarify that I was mistaken, if you will. This is Senator Tom Cotton from the floor of the Senate talking about the abortion debate. Listen to this. Oh, do we not have it? Oh, okay, we do have it. Sorry, there's 1,000 buttons to click. Go ahead.
On both sides of this sensitive issue, we resolve that not everyone agrees when or even if we ought to protect the.
Sorry about that, folks. We had it going. Let's refresh. Go ahead. Sorry.
Everyone agrees when or even if we ought to protect the unborn, and I understand that. I know there are decent people on both sides of this sensitive issue. We resolve our differences, reach compromises through democratic debate. What should never happen, though, is billion-dollar corporations trying to dictate these moral questions to us. Politically correct CEOs shouldn't be in the business of threatening normal Americans. But that's exactly what we've seen lately. The loudest objections to these pro-life laws haven't come from the bottom up, from normal citizens who happen to disagree with one another, but from the top down, from cultural elites, and increasingly from giant corporations who wield their economic power as a weapon to punish the American people for daring to challenge their pro-abortion extremism.
Very well said. Tucker Carlson, we talked about what he said about these corporations and how they actually want women to get abortions. He insinuated that massive corporations want women to get abortions so that they stay in the workforce, so that they stay and contribute to the corporation's profits. Now, that's a whole nother level of evil right there, where you're just like, hey, there's a financial incentive for us if we need to make sure these women are killing their babies so they don't dare think about staying home and raising more people, because we'd much rather them be working for us and increasing the value of our stock for our shareholders. I mean, do you guys remember when the left used to be anti-corporations? And I'm not anti-capitalism and I'm not anti-corporations, but I'm anti the union. I mean, that's what we're seeing with the freedom of speech and the Fourth Amendment violations. It's like, well, the government could never do what Facebook does. Facebook is allowed to do it, but the government has backdoors into all Facebook stuff, so it's essentially the government doing it, because you have this union where you can't tell the difference.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 1230 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
And I was reading a thing about virtue among the forefathers during the days of the colony. It said as the colonists became more virtuous, they began to take a more personal interest in the affairs of government and called for a speedy separation from England. As they became more virtuous, the abuses of King George became more intolerable for them to bear. In 1798, John Adams pointed out that our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. That's something that we have really got to take in consideration when it comes to legislation or requirements such as this. We have to be a virtuous people. Our Constitution can only perform correctly in a moral society. And when morality goes out the door, our Constitution goes out the door with it.
Dan,
and
do you think that,
yes.
I agree with that. Do you think that's because we are so free, or maybe we were, and just because, we have the freedom doesn't necessarily mean that we should act on that freedom in some instances?
Well, if we really look at the words liberty and freedom, there is a slight difference. Freedom basically says you can do anything that you want to do, how you want to do it, where liberty is more of a freedom within the circle of morality. And we need to be a liberty-loving people to enjoy the freedoms within the circle of morality. And as James Madison warned us, he also warned us about apathy towards government. And he said, I go on this great Republican principle that the people will have virtue and intelligence to, listen to this, to select men of virtue and wisdom. Is there no virtue among us? If there be not, we are in a wretched situation. No theoretical checks, no form of government can render us secure. And our forefathers understood how important morality is among government. And that goes back to we the people. Basically, the Constitution is nothing but pen and paper. It's just ink and paper. But without it, if it doesn't have an enforcer, it's rendered worthless. And the enforcer of the Constitution is not government itself, but it's we the people. And we must be a people of virtue in order to enforce the Constitution in its original context. Without that, we continually have this kind of requirements that come up and to infringe upon our inalienable rights, such as being able to arm ourselves for the purpose of self-preservation. And so then it becomes more and more of a privilege rather than that God-given right.
Yeah.
And so we have got to be vigilant and to stay on our toes.
I really appreciate, we're talking with Dan Boren with the Patriots VAC 746. I really appreciate the truth that you just spoke to that, because what you're essentially saying is that the less, the more corrupt, the more immoral, the less virtuous we become, the harder it is to hold our society together in the confines of the
That's
Constitution.
exactly right.
And here's,
that's exactly right.
Yeah, it is. And here's the reason. You don't want to adhere to it. You have to have, if you're going to police a immoral people, you have to have a strong hand. You have to have a strong arm. And
That's right.
That's what's going on. So we have, the less virtuous we become, the more people want to take and are taking extra constitutional means to try to police us. And this is in the context directly of the Arkansas State Police. They believe they want access to your medical records because they just they can't, they can't tolerate this current level of freedom because they would rather assume that, well, it's the government's responsibility to decide whether or not you're responsible to protect yourself, family, or property, to basically have the right to self-preservation. And what ends up happening, and what we have seen, is a spiral out of control, Dan. And Francis Schaeffer, theologian Francis Schaeffer, talked about this at the beginning of his book, How Should We Then Live? When he basically said, in this post-Christian
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. This is hour number 2. This is Conduit News. You found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We're building a liberty machine, and we need your help. One of the ways you can do it is to keep listening, but tell your friends. You can support us for $5 a month over at Patreon. That's patreon.com/CNR. Folks, he's a financial expert, an entrepreneur, a hedge fund manager, and a venture capitalist. That phrase is a bad word over on the left. His name is Joel Block. He's also an author, Stop Hustling Gigs and Start Building a Business. Joel, welcome to the program this morning.
Hey, Paul, how are you this morning?
I'm doing fantastic, sir. So first of all, tell us a little bit about your book and your experience as a venture capitalist. That sounds fun.
Well, listen, venture capitalists, we finance ideas and innovation. And so investors give us money, and then we go around figuring out which ones are likely to be the big hits. So, I've never worked on like in Silicon Valley, but I've done a lot of smaller deals, and that's been significant. So as a result of all that experience, I wrote a book basically cataloging 101 of the best ideas I came across in the last 20 years.
Wow. That's awesome. It's always great to talk to somebody, that has done interesting things like that, and then decided to share it with others. Put pen to paper. So let me ask you something. As a hedge fund guy, as an investor, this trade war with China, what are your thoughts on this, and how long do you think it's going to last?
Well, first of all, I understand that you got these Chinese. It's a billion people. These are very proud people, and they're not going to let us run over them like a lawnmower. I mean, they're just not going to let it happen. So whether it's real or not, they at least have to stand up for themselves and show great pride. They've also, think about how much they've accomplished in the last 30 years. I mean, they've really become an economic superpower, rivaling us. And so they're in a powerful situation. I think our president, though, is a wonderful negotiator, and I think that he's 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of all the rest of us, and we all don't totally get what he's doing. But he is. I've seen it in the last couple of years now. He just keeps pulling rabbits out of the hat, and it really surprises me. So I think this is less of a problem than a lot of us, are worried about.
I agree with you. I think it is as well, and I know people traditionally on the right wing of the aisle are not for tariffs, but you do have an increasing number of them, me included, that are saying, listen, Trump is a free trade guy, but he just wants the playing field to be leveled. And in order to do that, he's got to basically stand up for America by saying, listen, we're not going to put up with these trade deficits anymore.
Think of it like this. When he was in the private sector, he had very limited things he could negotiate. But as the leader of our country, he wakes up one day and says, you know what, we're having tariffs today. So out of thin air, he creates these tariffs, and then he starts releasing them one at a time in the negotiation. So he created something out of thin air and then starts to abate them over time. And look what he did with Mexico, Canada, all these other countries. I mean, this has been going on for a year, this strategy, and this strategy has yielded incredible benefit. China, listen, they need us. I mean, China really, number one, they own $1 trillion of our debt, maybe a little more. And so they can't really afford for us to have a tremendous setback. They need us. Number two, we're a very big buyer of their merchandise. I mean, they're a major exporter to us. So although they do business for the rest of the world, they need us a lot. So there's a little bit of brinksmanship, a little bit of show here. I think that this is going to take care of itself here not too long from now.
So let me ask you this about China in terms of being a threat to us economically or even militarily. The Conduit News, we focus a lot on politics here in Arkansas, and one of the chief economic development policies of the state in many states are to give incentives for companies to move here, and taxpayer-funded incentives. And we had, before President Trump was elected, there were 4 Chinese deals. These Chinese companies, communist Chinese companies, were going to move here, take our taxpayer dollars, take our resources, send the profits back home, but, hopefully create jobs in the process. And, of course, all those deals now are on hold. And then you compare that with things like, the FBI, the CIA. They've got investigations into Chinese espionage in all 50 states. We had some men who were indicted here in Arkansas for stealing rice technology out of Stuttgart. There really is a problem here with intellectual property theft, isn't there?
Yeah, it's well known. I mean, the Chinese deny it, but we've been talking about this for years. They don't have the same kind of legislative system, the same kind of legal and penal system that we have, and so they freely take that. In fact, the government seems to encourage some of these activities. It's unclear. We don't have absolute proof that this is happening, but there are a lot of companies that take their manufacturing there. The next thing you know, they've got new competitors that they didn't have before. So, it seems, clear and obvious, but it's also not been proven as far as I know.
Yeah, it really is. It's very interesting to watch this all play out. And you mentioned Mexico. That was something. Let me ask you this: what do you think about how the media covers all of this? Because they just claim that Trump is a really dumb guy, and they say they're ignoring the fact that people that I guess maybe used to be on the left, more of your union types, they've been for tariffs for a long time. And yet they made fun of him with Mexico. They said this is not going to work. Then they said you don't really have a secret deal. And then they ratified the public deal. And then they said, yeah, this is what the secret deal was. I mean, everything the guy said was true. And yet there's no consequences. The media just still continues to hate this man.
I built a company and sold it to one of our big newspaper companies in the United States. So I was inside the media business for a long time. And I think the media has really shot itself in the foot, and they're taking it. They're paying the price, by the way. I mean, they're struggling. I mean, look, you got a show, and you have nothing to do with traditional media.
Correct.
I mean, I've got a show, same thing. I mean, so we have moved those dollars. We're competing for advertisers. We're taking things away from traditional media, and it's hurting them in a significant way. But they continue to really, push Americans away, and they have this agenda which. Their job is not to take a position on who should be the president of the United States. Their job is to share information with us, tell us what we need to know, allow the citizens to gather facts and make decisions. But they really kind of think that we don't have the educational background to make these decisions for ourselves. So instead, they're going to give us the decision and the opinion that we need. So I think that the coverage is very lopsided. I think they've done a very poor job. They've really moved away from their journalistic ethics and some of the things that are required of them in their industry, and we're suffering for it. And as a result, we have this polarization of our citizens, where legislators don't get along, citizens don't get along. It's difficult for people to be friends because they have such different opinions. The world has become a weird place.
It really is. They've made opinion guys like me more objective than themselves, because at least I tell you that I'm on the right and I want limited government and lower taxes, and so you know where I'm coming from, versus people who are claiming to be objective but they're clearly not. So that's an observation that I've had for a long time.
See, you have an opinion which is well stated and it's obvious. But when you present it as news, that's what fake news is. Fake news is really, it's an opinion that's not really news. It's not that it's a lie. It's that it's an opinion that's disguised as, we got 3 or 4 big networks and a few other credible sources, and all the rest is just talk. It's just opinion, and we've got thousands of these little shows and things now, and 700,000 podcasts, and everybody's got an opinion, and they're all broadcasting it like it's a fact, but it's not, and a lot of citizens don't know the difference because it's not easy and obvious for them to tell. So this is it's a big issue, isn't it?
It really is. It really is. So Joel, we're talking with Joel Block. He's a hedge fund manager, author of the book Stop Hustling. Bullseye Capital. Stop hustling gigs and start building a business. Joel, you say you got a show of your own. So is there somewhere people can get that?
Yeah. It's a podcast show that it's called Profit from the Inside. Strategies to give your business the inside track. So we just bring on a parade of guys that really give the inside track to listeners. It's the best, fastest, smartest ways to get things done. And we just have an awesome array of really interesting characters that present all kinds of ideas.
That's great.
So, listeners who run businesses or are involved in businesses would enjoy it a lot.
All right, Joel Block, it was a pleasure meeting you, sir. I appreciate you spending some time with us this morning. I'd love to do it again sometime.
Hey, thanks, Paul.
All right, folks, telephone number 870-275-9799. We're going to have the tax increase breakdown, the numbers. We're going to have that coming up at 7:33. You don't want to miss it. You can get a sneak peek at conduitnews.com. Back in just a moment. Society of America, which he kind of said it was post-Christian back in 1974 with Roe versus Wade. He said the Christian consensus was over at that point when you're going to allow the murder of babies, and he said basically you're going to have God pushed out of public life, and when that happens, because I know you know this, Dan, but for our younger audience, when we talk about a moral people, you only get that morality, what's right and what's wrong, from the image reflected from us, from God, from a holy and perfect God who's
that's
just
correct.
And
that is correct.
But the more immoral you get, and the more you force God out of public life, the more government comes in and says, now, we've got to try to police this immoral behavior because it's not good. It's not good if you don't honor your father and mother, I mean, this doesn't help our society. It makes us worse. And how many fatherless homes do we have, too? I mean, when you don't love and take care of your kids. And so, but then immoral people always find a way.
Hey, folks, it's me, Paul Harrell. I want to say hello to everybody out there who's listening. We appreciate you and your support, especially those listening on KFPW, the Marshall out of Fort Smith, 96.7 FM, 1230 AM. For all of our listeners, if you ever missed the program, you can get us online at conduitnews.com, facebook.com/conduitnews, or our YouTube channel. Just search for Conduit News and be sure to click the subscribe button and click the little bell to receive notifications. Here at Conduit News Radio, we provide you multiple ways to listen to your #1 source for Arkansas news and politics. ConduitNews.com.
use the word works to make the sheeple think it's for working folk. Then they should go on the attack and get the public distracted. I would advise the politician to publicly question why our political dialogue has become so uncivilized and tell them to claim using the word lie, no matter how accurate, is a personal attack on his or her character. And if they admit to any wrongdoing at all, they must replace the word lie with words like misspoke, misstatement, misrepresent, or mislead.
Amazing! Excellent work, Susie. I feel like the student has really become the teacher. You will make a terrific addition to the Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language.
All hands on deck. This is a Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language emergency. Several politicians are scrambling after being exposed by some talk radio host. Let's move it, people. They need our help.
The Bureau of Carefully Crafted Language. You vote 'em in, and we keep 'em in. PHP Parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, here we go. Welcome back. 870-275-9799 is the telephone number if you want to contribute to the conversation today. Let's go here. 2 nights ago, the massive Orlando rally with President Trump, Sarah Huckabee Sanders saying her final goodbye. Here's what President Trump had to say about it once again. Listen to this.
A woman who has been so good, so talented, so wonderful, and we're sort of going to be losing her. I have a feeling she's going to be running for a certain gubernatorial position. Don't worry about it, Ron. It's not going to be in Florida. It won't be in Florida, I promise you, Casey. It should be tough, right? But a woman who's a special woman and her father, by the way, he's out there fighting for us all the time. Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
So Sarah Sanders here taking the stage. Just listen to that crowd, though. For those of you watching at facebook.com/Conduit News. She's walking on the stage.
Thank you, Mr. President. This has been truly the honor of a lifetime, one of the most incredible experiences anybody could ever imagine. And that's because I've had the chance to be on the front row of history and watch you drastically change our country for the better. You've made America great. You're going to continue to make America great. I couldn't be prouder to be part of your team. I'm going to go spend a little time with my kids. But no one will be a stronger voice and a more fierce advocate for this president, because he's fighting for all of the people in this room and for all of the people that you represent all over the country. And he's going to have an incredible 6 more years to make our country as strong as it's ever been. Thank you so much, Mr. President.
All right, stop. Sarah Huckabee Sanders in Orlando 2 nights ago, and now we have, right after that, of course, you hear the president mentioning a potential gubernatorial run here in the state of Arkansas. And right after that, the Politico with a story. And they say that, according to Andrew Restuccia and Daniel Lipman, Sarah Sanders is extremely serious about a run for Arkansas governor. Outgoing White House press secretary got a recent boost when President Donald Trump encouraged her to run. So that's, according to the source, she's extremely serious. Said one of the people who talked to her, extremely serious is how it's being described. So, this is very interesting. If in fact she does come to the state and decides to run, I think a lot of people were already anticipating a primary of some kind in the Republican Party between Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin and someone, right? Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin and somebody. But I don't think anyone. I didn't anticipate it would be Sarah Huckabee Sanders, but it might be. That would be a very interesting race. There's no doubt about it. And as we were talking about, I guess a few days ago, these Republican county committees, I'm sure they're not gonna be able to prevent people from speaking. They're gonna have to do be a little different than they were during the last Republican primary when it came to the governor's race. So let me know what you guys think about that, that prospect, if you will. You can sound off Facebook.com/Conduit News. You see, I will say this about Sarah Sanders and President Trump. Obviously, if President Trump were to campaign for her, that would be a huge boost for her, number one. Number two, I think a lot of people are going to assume that Sarah Huckabee Sanders would be a mirror reflection of the president. That's not necessarily true because we don't know, right? But there would probably be a lot of people that would assume that. And there is no question that Sarah Huckabee Sanders has done an incredible job. I have thought many times as I was, going over the news, being a news hound, doing what I got to do to, get a show together for you guys every day. I've thought many times that the job she was doing at an historical time where the press has never been more hostile than they are, have never been more vitriolic, more angry, more unfair. I mean, just unfair to this president. And she's up there fielding questions. And not just fielding questions, but DDTing people, essentially. Like, she's essentially, like, taking their... Or, her response to some of these reporters is like the equivalent of, like, Darth Vader, like, your devotion to that ancient religion didn't help you conjure up the stolen plans. And then Darth Vader just... I mean, she literally would just, with her words, rather, not Jedi powers, but with her words would just make the press look ridiculous. And there really hasn't been a press secretary to do that in a long time. I mean, I've never really heard, not of the caliber of her. So, so we had a wrestling reference there and a Star Wars reference. Yes! I don't even know. I just know what a DDT is. I don't really follow wrestling. State Representative Dwight Tosh broke my heart when he talked about the wrestling bill that he passed because they were regulated under like a sporting event, and he got them deregulated because wrestling is... Well, he claimed it wasn't real. He claimed it wasn't real. I mean, if you're going to believe that guy... No, yeah, I'm talking about, I'm not talking about collegiate wrestling. I'm talking about the WWE. Talking about SmackDown this Thursday. On Tuesdays. Joe knows that it's not on Thursdays. Joe just was like, it's on Tuesdays now, Paul. You don't know. All right, we're going to take a break. Going to be back here in just a minute with some tax increase numbers for you. Need cameras everywhere. Right? And then that doesn't work. And I'll go back to my first argument. Now we have the social media technology, social credit scores, this is all what's coming now. I'll let you respond to that, Dan, but I really appreciate your point of view this morning.
What you're saying, Paul, is absolutely correct. What it is, to boil it down in a nutshell, with a society that grows more and more immoral comes more and more laws and legislation placed upon all of us. That is, along with those who are striving to maintain morality, these laws come down upon all of us. And it means more government control over a society, because freedom, true liberty, and freedom, as our forefathers intended, can only work within a moral society. So you just throw all of these things out the door, and then you're going to lose liberty completely. And so, with that being said, it's been a pretty dark time here recently in the state of Arkansas. But I want to encourage everyone out there, our listeners, those who are a part of Patriots of Act 746. I want to encourage you to lift your head up. I want to encourage you to stand up and get that grit in your craw again. And sometimes we just want to throw the towel in and just say, the fight is too hard. It's so hard. I just don't think I can do it anymore. Think about what our forefathers went through, and think about all of the sucker punches that they got, and how that they had the wind just knocked them completely out of their cells, and they just felt like falling to their knees and giving up. But they didn't. They didn't give up, and we can't give up either. This fight is never going to end as long as we are here upon this earth. We are going to have to continue to fight, continue to educate our posterity, so that they can carry the fight, they can carry the torch after we are long gone. If we don't teach our young people and teach them moral value, and teach them what our forefathers intended and our inalienable rights, then we're going to lose this thing. We must be vigilant, hold our heads up, and I know that the late Senator Linda Collins Smith, that's exactly what she would want us to do. Stand up and keep fighting for that which is good. That's what she did. She was a great supporter of the Patriots. She attended as many of the luncheons that she could. She encouraged, and she was just a wonderful person, and we need to carry on with.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So we immediately just got a phone call from somebody who's saying that wrestling may be scripted, but it's extremely physically demanding. Yeah, absolutely it is. Go watch that Joe Rogan podcast where Jake the Snake is interviewed for like 3 hours. It's heartbreaking. Oh my gosh, the stuff about injuries and everything else. And also you look at the WWE and how they don't have they're all contract labor, by the way, so they don't actually have benefits of any kind. And if you get hurt or injured, so you got these guys that will get fired if they take any kind of like break to get healed up and repaired. So
not anymore.
Are you sure?
Not anymore.
So Vince McMahon fixed that then?
For sure.
Because I saw a report, I feel like it was a couple months ago, and it was extremely critical. It's like a whole documentary about it. Maybe the documentary was old.
Maybe it's old, or maybe
I'm not an expert.
Maybe the perception that WWE puts out is very different now.
No,
but because there are people who leave constantly for injuries. Because, like for instance, there was a wrestler that I was really he was my favorite wrestlers at the time. Still kind of is. His name is Finn. His stage name is Finn Balor. Well, when they introduced one of the new championships into the scene, the Universal Championship, back a few years ago, Finn won the championship. He was the very first Universal Champion. But during the match, he was severely injured. He was on the shelf for about 8 months, recuperating and stuff.
No, I think maybe
he lost the title.
Was he a big star though? I mean, I'm assuming he was. If he was.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Finn's a huge star.
I'm talking about for the rank and file, the day in day out guys who have not been elevated and are not big money makers. There was a whole thing about it. Anyway, look it up. We'll get to the facts, but I'm pretty sure there's for sure still contract employees. Okay, so listen to this. ConduitNews.com. Here we go. I mean, what's the number, right? Whiteboard from weeks ago. What is the number, right, Joe? We've been asking people, and We got them right here. And their DFNA zone numbers, they were available to you anytime you want to do your own research and just do a little math. Here it is. Headline, conduitnews.com, net tax increase, new tax laws from the 92nd General Assembly. And it's really, really sad, considering, remember, where we've been with the proposed tax cuts that were put on hold 3 years ago, and instead there was a task force that was created to study tax reform, and then this is what they actually gave us. And it's because we have a government in Arkansas that is so bloated that spends almost $8,000 per person, whereas Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Tennessee, Mississippi, and Louisiana spend an average of $5,000 to $6,000 a person. That's the difference. That's all you really need to know. But then you look at how high of a tax state we are. One of the highest sales tax states in the nation. One of the lowest states when it comes to per capita income. We rank like 44th in the nation according to the latest USA Today the USA Today study. It's very, very sad. And so in that context, you would think that massive Republican supermajorities would find somewhere to cut to actually deliver more money into people's pockets, leaving it there and, hoping that we would have a principle of the Arkansas Republican platform, tax cuts that produce economic growth. Now, there was some tax cuts, there was some structure changes that were good, and there was some corporate tax reform, but all of that goes into effect years down the road. And we know that you can't bind future legislators. And so if they refuse to cut now, they may refuse to cut later when maybe the economy's not doing so great. And then these tax cuts could be rescinded at any time before they even go into effect. Net tax increases. What does that mean? This article up at conduitnews.com right now will show you how the Arkansas legislature passed new tax laws that result in a net tax increase on the people of Arkansas over the next few fiscal years. If the 0.5% sales tax increase proposed by the legislature on the 2020 general election ballot passes, there will be massive annual tax increases of over $200 million a year. Governor Asa Hutchinson decreed the 92nd General Assembly as the greatest of all time for Arkansas. While there were some good tax decrease measures passed this session, they are overcome by the tax increase measures passed. And here we have a short description. Act 822, Joe. Internet Tax 2.0, corporate tax reform / car wash fees. That's a revenue impact in fiscal year 2020 of $43,819,363. I actually think it's going to be much more than that. In 2021, that's $39 million more dollars. Now, any number that's in parentheses here is a decrease. It's actually a hit on the budget, meaning less money going to the government. But of course, we can do math and add. Act 580 of the 92nd General Assembly, a cigarette paper tax increase, raising the smoking age to 21 and removing a border exemption pricing. That will raise an additional $720,000 from the people to the government. Act 416, a gas tax increase on at the wholesale level that will translate to 3 to 6 cents at the pump. $57,580,907 more going from you to the government. Let's see, what else do we have here? We have HCR 18. We'll see the bullet point there, the source there here in just a moment. Act 182, income tax cut, which is a loss in fiscal year 2020 of $25.6 million, right? Then you have Act 808, the homestead property tax credit, which is an impact of $12.5 million. That's in the negative impact, okay? So that's less money going to the government. You have Act 660, which was an increase in your cell phone tax. That's $10.1 million more going from you to the government. And then Act 788, raising water bill fees. That's $1 million. In fiscal year 2020, if you add all of that up, that is a net tax increase of $75,120,270. Again, those in parentheses on this chart are decreases. Revenue numbers are from the Arkansas state government DFNA and Department of Health. These are government numbers. All you have to do is do the math. And it gets much worse if we pass the ballot measure in 2020 that would not allow a sales tax to sunset as it was scheduled to do when they voted on it 10 years ago or 12 years ago. So here are the overall tax changes. In fiscal year 2020, thanks to the 92nd General Assembly, that's a $75.1 million net tax increase. In fiscal year 2021, $50.7 million net tax increase. In fiscal year 2024, $290.7 million. Again, that is if you have the ballot measure pass. In fiscal year 2029, $246.3 million net tax increase. Again, can we agree on the definitions of words and phrases? People want to ask, why is the Republican Party divided on economic policy sometimes? Well, it's because we can't agree on the definitions of words and phrases, okay? A tax cut here, but a tax increase more than the tax cut over here is not a net tax cut. That is a tax increase. The phrase overall tax burden. What is the overall tax burden? I've said since October of last year, that's the only thing I care about with the Arkansas General Assembly in terms of tax policy is what's the tax burden now? Will it stay the same? Will it go up or will it go down? It appears to have gone up. Going into the 92nd General Assembly, my most optimistic self was hoping it would just stay the same. Here's more details. On the income tax cut, $97 million. It's a cut phased in. It drops the top tax rate from 6.9 to 5.9 over 3 years, but it's phased in over the next 3 fiscal years. Then the gas tax increase, which starts collecting this October, not in 3 years, but now, this year, right? It's going to raise $95 million. You have the half percent permanent sales tax, which is a proposed constitutional amendment to create a permanent 0.5% sales tax in the Constitution for roads, which would generate $293 million annually from the people to the government if passed. The internet sales tax plus corporate tax cuts together in the same bill, a new internet sales tax, which starts July 1st, plus lowering the corporate income tax from 6.9 to 5.9, and an extension of a net operating loss carry forward from 5 years to 10 years. Also, a new single sales factor apportionment. The tax decreases are phased in over the next 10 years, but the internet tax applies July 1st. So in 10 days, the internet tax 2.0 applies to all internet transactions, including third-party sellers or almost all internet transactions. The official estimate is likely to be way underestimated, and I think it really is, hence the Spotify emails everybody got. If you subscribe to Spotify this weekend, you all got emails saying that your bill's going up $1.75 a month because of the Arkansas General Assembly and their tax increases. You have the homestead tax credit increase, which increases the tax credit for homestead properties by $25, which is a good thing. Right now it's $350 tax credit going to $375. The bill passed. This is a good thing. So there are good things, but what's the overall impact to the burden on the taxpayer, the people of Arkansas? Again, we spend almost $8,000 per person to fund our government, where the rest of the states spend $5,000. That's the problem here, and we're one of the poorest states in the country. I think there's a direct correlation between that. The increased cell phone fees and water fees, the cigarette paper tax. These tax increases come at the same time the state has seen record revenue and hundreds of millions of dollars in surplus money. At the end of the session, based on the actions of a supermajority of Republicans, the people of Arkansas are lined up to pay more money to the government, causing government to grow even larger, because that's what happens. Now, again, I think you understand why the governor said, before any of these numbers were out, he said a couple months ago that the 92nd General Assembly was the greatest of all time, was the GOAT. If we were a state that had people in leadership who were members of the Democrat Party, this amount of revenue taken from the people would be seen as a success. It might even be seen as the greatest session of all time, based on the Democrat Party's economic philosophy that says funding the government is the priority, not the individual keeping as much money as they possibly can while still providing the necessary funds for government. The things that we agree. The government should be paying for roads. But it shouldn't be paying, because a vast majority of us agree the government should be paying for roads. But a vast majority of Arkansans do not agree with some of these welfare programs that are going on, some of this other spending that's going on. And again, they didn't even have the conversation of cutting spending before they asked for more money from you. They refused to have it. It'd have been one thing if they said, we have to raise your taxes at the pump. We have to. We're so sorry, but we've got to do it. But hey, we need $95 million. We found $40 million of it. We already found $40 million of it in savings. We're cutting this part. We're cutting this out. We're going to use that towards roads. And we just need another, $45 million, $50 million from you. They didn't even have that conversation. It's very, very sad. So where is Arkansas headed? Tucker Carlson of Fox News interviewed Victor Davis Hanson recently, and he said this about the state of California. But I want you to imagine, what if this isn't about the state of California? Here's Tucker Carlson interviewing Victor Davis Hanson on Monday, and this struck a chord with me. I want to see if it strikes a chord with you, our listening audience. Listen.
Hanson is a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution. He's also a lifelong, multi-generational Californian. He just wrote a column describing his state as America's first third world state. Professor Hanson joins us tonight. Professor, thanks very much for coming on. In what sense is California a third world state?
Well, it has all the symptoms of what we associate with failed states. It's got the highest basket of income tax, gasoline taxes, sales tax, and yet its schools are rated in the last 10%, the bottom 10% of the nation's test scores. 1/3 of the nation's welfare recipients live in California. 1/5 of the population, as you said, is below the poverty line. 1/5 of all the homeless people in the United States live in California. We have a medieval society, Tucker, of a very tiny but very affluent elite. We have the most billionaires of any state in the nation, and then we have the largest underclass. And part of that, Governor Newsom's got it exactly wrong. 25 years ago, when we had Prop 187 that cut off health care, but not emergency health care, to undocumented immigrants, that passed by 59% of the population. It fueled Pete Wilson's come up from behind victory over Kathleen Brown. It was very popular, but 3 days later, a federal court invalidated it, and that got rid of the deterrent factor, and people wanted to come to California, often illegally, and they resided here illegally. And that was, unfortunately, part of a perfect storm where at the same time 4 to 6 million people over the next 25 years said, if I'm going to pay the highest basket of taxes and get the worst roads, infrastructure, public schools, and among the highest crime rates. San Francisco, by the way, has the highest property per capita crime rate of major cities in the United States. Then I might as well go where there's no income taxes, like Nevada or Florida. And the third wind in that perfect storm was, it came at the same time in the late 90s, middle 90s, of the growth of Silicon Valley. So eventually, over the next quarter century, Google, Facebook, Apple would be capitalized at about $3 trillion. We created a very small but influential, wealthy, manorial class that was not subject to the ramifications of their own ideology. And by that I mean, when Jerry Brown retired, he didn't live here in Fresno. He went to Grass Valley with his pensions. Dianne Feinstein didn't put her kids, her daughter, in the public schools. She lives in Pacific Heights, not Redwood City. Nancy Pelosi rails about education, but none of her grandchildren were in the San Francisco public schools. So we've created a very wealthy class that doesn't mind high taxes because it has ways to navigate around that and poor social services. And the people in between are sort of like peasants outside of a medieval keep that can't survive, and so they drift off. And we were left with a sort of a romanticized indigent class, and then a royal elite that doesn't really care about the vanishing middle class at all.
Stop.
From the outside, Professor,
does that describe us at all? It's an honest question. You may disagree, but Does that describe us at all? I mean, when you rattle off the statistics about the highest sales tax, higher income tax, we're trying to change the structure of our income tax. I think we will over the next couple of years, 6.9 to 5.9. Some of the worst schools, though. How many more boxes do you want? One of the higher, I mean, is Arkansas the welfare state? I mean, it looks like California in terms of actual numbers, but what about percentages? Folks, if there's 3 million people in Arkansas and 1 million of us are on Medicaid now, 1/3 of our population is on Medicaid. That's certainly something to be concerned about, don't you think? Do we have an elite, and do we have a really poor that, where we do have a kind of a serfdom that's developing? I mean, listen, I sat there and I watched the vape shops. Now, thankfully, this actually got defeated, but the sponsors didn't really care. I sat there and watched the vape shop owners come to these committees and tell these senators, hey, listen, we're not Juul. We're helping people stop smoking. We're doing this in a responsible way, and if you pass this bill and you do these tax increases on us, you're going to put, and it was vape shop, it was small business owner after small business owner, vape shop after vape shop, saying we're helping people stop using combustible cigarettes to save their lives. And this will put us out of business if you pass this. And the Senate committee didn't care. They didn't listen to them. They didn't care about what they had to say. And then that bill went and passed the Senate and it died in the House. But still, like, do we know what we're even advocating anymore? Look at the tax policy that we just passed. This makes the government richer, but it makes the state, the people that live here, poorer. It makes us less wealthy. I don't know. When I listened to Victor Davis Hanson there, I thought that you literally, which direction are we going? Let's just talk about that. Are we going the direction of California, or are we going the direction of other states like Tennessee or Texas? And I'd say Texas loosely because I'm worried about Texas, because you got all these liberals moving there, but they don't realize that the reason they're moving to a more free place is because they've been voting for tyranny, economic tyranny, and, policies that don't make sense back where their failed states are. Let me know. What do you guys think? 870-275-9799. We're going to take a break. This is Conduit News. You can get the article on the net tax increases that the General Assembly passed when it's all said and done at conduitnews.com. It's up right now on the front page. Back in a minute.
Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
What she would want us to do.
I
What if you had your own personal recruiter to help you find a better job? And they would say, hey, I found a company that likes your profile and may even pay you more. Well, if you had a personal recruiter, that's what they'd do. But now, ZipRecruiter's technology can do that for you. Just download the free ZipRecruiter job search app, customize your job matches, and its technology does the work. It hustles for you to find jobs you'll like, and puts your profile in front of employers who may be looking for someone just like you. If a company likes your profile, ZipRecruiter lets you know, and if you are interested, you can apply. No wonder ZipRecruiter is the #1 rated job search app. And based on a third-party survey, 7 out of 10 people who found a new job on ZipRecruiter increased their salaries. So download the free ZipRecruiter app today and put the power of technology to work for you.
Results of a 2017 U.S. survey of over 500 ZipRecruiter users who got hired for a job they found on ZipRecruiter.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Man, the stories we covered today, Joe Biden talking about segregationists in a flattering way, just in terms of that he was able to work with them and get things done. Liberals who are presidential candidates freaking out. Cory Booker freaking out, saying Joe needs to apologize. And then, of course, Joe says, no, Cory Booker needs to apologize. The left eating their own. Again, conservatives slowly back out of the room. Also, the reparations hearing to give black Americans reparations because of slavery. That hearing was held yesterday. The Republicans had 2 witnesses. One, Burgess Owens, who's a former safety for the New York Giants, and gave a great speech and asked the Democrat Party, if anybody's going to pay reparations, the Democrat Party should, for the misery they've caused my race, he said. Then, of course, a man by the name of Coleman Hughes, a columnist and author, he was against reparations and got booed by the people in the audience for saying, and because he's black and has a different opinion. You know, diversity means that we should all look different but think the same. If you look different and think different, you are a problem. You're a big problem. Also, we talked about Tom Cotton, by the way. Tom Cotton from the well of the Senate did an excellent job advocating against abortion, and we played that audio for you. And all this available at conduitnews.com if you'd like to hear it. Now for our meme of the day. Do we have our meme of the day, Joe? Here it is. This is, I think, very applicable considering what we just talked about with the direction that things are headed. This, again, from Epic Conservative Memes. They're just so good on Instagram. Characters whose plans always fail miserably. We have the guy, the villain, a cartoon villain. What's this guy's name again? It's, I can't remember. It's from The Great Race or something. This villain, anyway. You have Tom, the cat from Tom and Jerry. His plans don't really ever work out well when he's trying to catch Jerry. You have Wile E. Coyote, whose plans don't ever catch up with a road runner. And then you have Dick Dastardly from Wild Races. His plans, wacky races. His plans don't tend to work out. And then you just got a photo of Karl Marx. Characters whose plans always fail miserably. We'll post this meme of the day on Twitter at Conduit News, Facebook.com/Conduit News, and go ahead and subscribe on YouTube and click the little bell to receive notifications. Folks, Arkansas. We'll see you tomorrow for Johnny Cash Friday. Be safe.